Alright, hey, my voice. Weird. Okay. Alright, that works. It's all good? It's interesting. It's really funny because when I do talks, often I get nervous, and I don't have my glasses on today. So I could see really well right till about my hand, and behind that it starts getting blurrier and blurrier, and it's just a blur of people.
Perfect. Now you don't have to be nervous.
I love
See
it.
everybody.
So welcome to Design Ops from the Design TO side. Design TO turns our design thinking into design doing across industries and disciplines. Really, we focus on equity and inclusion and seeing what voices need to be brought into a conversation, and that's a lot of my passion behind Design TO. That's me floating in space. It looks kind of weird actually on a big screen. So I'm a designer, I'm an entrepreneur more so, a founder, I do design education. And I've done a lot of stuff, I guess, over the past 5 or 6 years, and they've been very operationally heavy. If the ops don't work, all of these businesses fail. Some of them you might recognize. Tux is the first agency I started. It evolved operationally over a little bit into an education space and a community space called Design Co-Founders. I worked on the writing project. This guy right here, it's an essay writing startup for students. So it helps walk students through the writing process using a bot. So we started doing research in that back in 2013. This is random. I started a coffee shop in 96 Spadina and I ran that for about 2 years. Has anyone ever been to the Independent? Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. All right. Good coffee. And so that was interesting. Imagine going from startup land and entrepreneurship and like agency and consulting, and then we have to worry about all the micro operations required to run a retail coffee establishment.
That's a startup.
It's totally a startup, and it was such a. It was. I'll talk about that one day. It was really, really interesting. But from the coffee, the micro operations really kicks in. Right now I'm doing three things. Design TO. It's been interesting to do three meetups after a year and a bit of a hiatus. I'm working at the Parkdale Center for Innovation. Has anyone heard of the Parkdale Center for Innovation at all? No. All right. Not. We're on Queen and Lansdowne. So it's an innovation space that's a not-for-profit. It was open back in Canada Day, was doors open. It focuses on providing inclusive programs, startup acceleration to entrepreneurs and professionals. It's on Queen and Lansdowne. Check it out. And yeah, so I guess going and working on all of these things as well as the pointy arrow on the bottom left corner, a stealth startup I'm working on, it got me to be design obsessed. Yes, yes, design obsessed, yes. No. Thank you, I appreciate it. So, but really, when you look behind the hood and everything that drove it, it wasn't we're designing for clients. It wasn't we're gonna build this brand new product and launch it. The real obsession behind everything and everyone that's worked with me is what are the operations? Are they working right? Can we make them better? How are we going to change it to be better next time? Anyone seen Star Wars? Yeah, this is the latest one. I don't know what it's called. Which one is this? Last Jedi. So I love this movie. I've seen it like 5 times. I watch it over and over again. And so what's happening here, a few things as we get into going from doing all of these things and thinking about ops, is at what cost? So in this scene, this guy, who is Poe, right, Poe? Yes? Alright. Poe decides to Poe, right? Yes, okay. He single-handedly decides to go in and fly his fighter and take out a whole bunch of things to destroy the Empire. The Empire has a big, I think it's, no wait, it's the, what do they call them? The bad guys in this movie. Help me? The First Order, that's right. So they're trying to take out the First Order, and there's a lot of screaming happening, and there's a lot of things getting done. What's getting done? You know, stuff is getting blown up, and it's like, it's an epic scene, and mission successful. There's a lot of screaming, so the guy in the middle, I tried to get a screenshot of every person screaming. It was really funny. But when you put the sequence beside each other, he's screaming, something wants to happen, and they go ahead and they destroy it. So the good guys bring down the dreadnought, and it goes down in flames. And then we get the celebrations. Everyone is happy and smiling, and back in the ship, they're like, yeah. But and then Princess Leia, she sees this, and so what this shows is all of the fighters that they lost, because Poe broke orders. He decided to go in there, gun it, save the day, and succeed. But with that success comes a lot of, I mean, and it's funny because she's the only person that's not screaming, and she's just looking at everybody like, "What are you doing?" And she was literally shaking her head because of the losses. Collateral damage at what cost? So that's the first thing that getting into the design side of things is at what cost are we doing things? So with Star Wars and things blowing up, the wins. What are the wins? Mission accomplished, right? Dreadnought brought down. It didn't really help out afterwards anyways, which is really interesting. But they did that. The losses, what's the cost? So they had human cost, opportunity cost, if they kept their fighters, etc. They lost half of their bombers. How do you weigh that? And how do you decide to weigh that? So what was my learning outcome from thinking of Star Wars and all of the different projects that we brought crashing to a halt, to complete them? And it's a model that I don't want to forget about when I teach applied design thinking, and it's called the sandbox model. So to explain the sandbox model and to not forget it, everyone knows what a sandbox is, right? In the playground, and it has sand in it, right? And there's rules to the playground. Sorry?
Virtual sand.
Virtual sand? Or real sand? Or is it fake sand? No, I'm talking about a real sandbox, like with sand in it. In the playground. And so a playground has rules, a sandbox has sandbox rules. You don't pick up the sand, you don't throw it at people, you know how much sand you have. You know what happens if you break the rules. I have 2 young daughters, one is 7 and 5. And they learned the rules, and I saw them growing up, and sometimes I'd stay back and watch them learn what they can and can't do in the sandbox. And so Poe broke the sandbox rules. He had parameters, and it's math, don't go and do that. Bad stuff might be able to happen. But he went on his own. So rule number 1, at what cost when we're doing design operations and just thinking in an ops mindset? Remember your constraints. Number 2. Yeah, makes sense. Number 2 now. Too much design. And that's a paradigm that I see often, and that's an eyeball. And so on the left here are screens. And so it's interesting. In the past 5 years, a lot of this happens, right? I speak to a founder or an executive. They get in touch with me and they say, "Hey, Mustefa, we're designing our product, and we'd really love to have you on board because we'd love to do great work together." And I say, "Okay, great. Sounds exciting," right? And I'd say out of 50 projects, 7 have been like this, 7 or 8. But it's interesting to see because they send me an Envision prototype or something that's been done in the past. And please be honest with me, I want to show hands. So this Envision prototype had 100 plus screens in it, like over 100 screens. And individual screens, and it was all laid out in Envision and broken down in categories, and it was very methodical. So someone went through it. There's something different on every screen. I mean, on screen 109, you might see username blank, and on screen 110, the username is filled in, and they caught it. When we're doing design, show of hands, how many have ever worked with more than 20 screens design to development? More? More than 30? 1 or 2? 40? Some hands? How many have actually worked with more than 50 screens in development? I see the same hands. FreshBooks? All right. It's really interesting. I mean, how big is an organization? How complicated is a design? I'm a design enterprise guy. I don't do a lot of consumer apps. Big data, fintech, health tech, ed tech. Why didn't I design a lot of screens? Maybe there's a secret behind this. It's a lot of work. I mean, could you imagine when you go through yeah, I wrote it. It's a lot. That's a lot. 100. I keep saying it because it mind boggles me. It means a few different things though. So as each one of these screens goes through the cloud screen conveyor belt, and you can see 140, 141. I'm counting just to 142, all the way to screen 146, and they go through it, and they have to go through the software development lifecycle, right? I mean, someone's got to project manage it. Someone's going to QA all of that. They're going to sit down. They're going to have to go through QA. Someone's going to do the content across all of those pages. And when we change stuff, what's going to happen? Someone's going to go back and have to update the designs across those screens. And hopefully they're using symbols, but who cares? Because you still got to make sure that it hit across 110 screens or something like that. So the content people go through it, the product manager goes through it, and then you gotta bring it to development, I guess, because development is looking at you like, okay, it's a lot of screens to develop, and why, and the agony in communicating all that. It's a lot of screens. What's happening after? No, let's stick with that for a sec. And then you see here, it goes right? Because half of the stuff, how are we tracking it? Are we actually going to QA everything? Are we actually going to write all the content for everything? And are we going to be able to track developing it all? When is too much design? And my first client was in 2013. I said, hey, I want to design stuff. And I saw Christina Wutke. Has anyone heard of Christina Wutke? No. Okay, so Christina Wutke is she wrote the first book on information architecture, I think like 34 years ago. She's a San Fran-based designer. And I saw that she wanted to design a website. And Christina's big thing is bringing OKRs to Silicon Valley and talking about OKRs a lot, which was an interesting experience for me. So in 2013, I saw her tweet, and I'm like, Christina, I could help you design a site. How hard could it be? And so she hired me. It was crazy, and I don't know why she hired me, but it was cool because I tweeted about design every now and then. So Christina hired me, and I started working. And at that time, I had a full-time job at an agency, and I took over the living room, the dining table. And I used to have these Skype calls with Christina. And during the Skype calls, this is my dining room wall, I start putting stickies and post-its, and at the end it was like a beautiful mind. It was just a bunch of stuff everywhere, and my wife would walking around looking at what I'm doing in the dining room, and I tell her it's design. Didn't work out too well, because I drowned in all of that information, not just from producing views and producing screens, but getting a lot of research and a lot of data, and having to work through it in a way that makes sense in a constrained time. When do you identify too much design? So that's something interesting to think about when it comes to design ops, especially when we're thinking of bridging it to development and making things real, and not sitting through meetings to review that many screens. So I dev, by the way, so I do design, and I do front-end development, some API development. I have to implement a lot of what I design often. And so the startup that I'm working on right now with a partner, it works across design and development, and how do those interact, and what does the future of that look like? And it came with two questions. Oh, there. Step back. It started pushing me into thinking about state-based design. Why state-based design? Because we develop in React. When we develop in React, we develop components. When we develop components, we just really care about the state of the component. And what's going to change the state of the component? And did the state change? And are we updating all the different components? And when I'm trying to bridge the challenges that I talked about and the design aspect, I'm bringing it over to development. How much design do we really need to do? That's the first question that comes up, especially when we have full control of the life cycle. So if I'm going to design and I'm going to develop, that means my mind kind of knows what's up, and I'm building a system. How much do I really need to design? The second question that comes up for me is, how much do we really need to build, right? So I built bad stuff. It's our own things. I built the first version of the writing project. We built it on Angular. It has a whole bunch of templates to serve to the users, and don't ask me why. We built the templates on the client side. We weren't saving them. We wanted a lot of templates, it turned out. So we were stuck with 3 templates on the client side. And we built all of that stuff out. And, React and component building and reusability and symbols and libraries has been coming into prominence over the past couple of years. But when I look at our old code bases, we end up writing a lot of lines of code, and because when we're designing things or when we're building things, we're building out a lot of user flows. We're building that 100 screens, basically. And when we're doing development now in 2018, I'm thinking a lot about state-based design. So what's state-based design for me? I think we're going to talk about it. So right now, we design for users, right? And we design for users to interact with components. my thinking starts saying instead, we can design around the success state of components, right? So say I got a drink. This is my bottle. Yeah, risk it. So this is my bottle, right? And the purpose of this bottle is to get, cooties and water out. And so um, it doesn't need you all to do it. You could all watch me do it, and you all watch me drink a little bit of water, and I'm done. And on with the show. The water lived its life cycle, right? So I'm going to repeat this. Usually we design for users to interact with components, and so we build out user flows, and we do every single user flow possible. What does it mean to stop doing that completely and design around the success state of a component? For this bottle would be to be used and then to be recycled, right? And then reused. Yes.
I think you have a cootie on your mustache.
No. It's the giant mustache.
You have a cootie on your mustache.
I have a cutie. So are we thinking designing and building every piece of UI? Are we thinking about, and are we designing, and are we building every piece of UI out? That's a lot of UI, especially with a big giant app with a whole lot of states and a whole lot of users interacting with it. Or the flip side is, are we architecting a system of components and state rules, right? Like you go to a playground, you see a sandbox, you know how it works, and you know the rules of the sandbox, and that's the same. It's not the same sandbox, but you know the other sandbox is wider, but this is a sandbox. I shouldn't eat the muck pies, right? And so, yeah, those are two completely different things to do. This takes a lot of people too, like a designer, a content person, and a product manager, etc. And it's not scalable. When you design every piece of the UI, obviously we want to design systems because systems are scalable. We want to architect sound systems that are scalable as well. We don't want to write a lot of code. I think at the end of the day, what I'm really saying here is how much are we communicating? How much do we need to talk to other people about what we're designing and about what they need to build? My hypothesis is that if we talk way less, right, there's less room for error, but we have to give people just enough to be able to ship things and build. So for example, I'm a component, right? And let's pretend that you're supposed to laugh because I said it in the Ralph voice. I'm a component. There, thanks. All right. Right. So here's an example, and it's an example for this. So if we say we're going to architect a system of components and state rules, and we're going to design around the success state of components. So if this is a component, what we want to do is find out how each user can impact the component's success state and design just that. So it kind of makes sense to me, right, in secret, as I'm thinking about it, and this concept's been going over the past 4 weeks. It's, does that work, right? And if we design for a success state, there's probably a failure state. There's a few different states that a component can have, right? And it can only be triggered by some types of actions, and those are very limited. So we look at our characters, right, who are all of our stakeholders, who are all of our users, and design around the component. Instead of doing a user flow for Maggie and Rod and Troy and Bart and Dr. Julius, we'd show a mapping of the component itself across different states and be able to communicate really, really well what triggers those state changes and what visual variations and changes the component can have. And when I say component state flows, I mean really, really from a dev perspective, as well as from a secondary angle, it's from a design perspective. And why do I say secondary angle? Because I'd like to see us in design right now, especially selfishly, the work that I'm doing. I'd like to see it match one-to-one with exactly what how we're architecting the development is the same way as we're architecting the design. Does that mean I'm not in favor of user flows or that kills user flows? No. Across, and I'll do some rough math, a bunch of projects, right? I'd say that we've maxed out, and I hold it at about 30 screens. I'd like to show 30 views. I'd like to have 1 or 2 pages, 3 pages max, right? And those are all templates, and they're fully reusable. And that means some edge cases might need to be user flowed. Challenges with this. What's the toughie? One is that this is new to think about. How are we designing just around components? Does that mean you literally say your dashboard has like 5 components? So the left nav, the right nav, the middle thing, and the thing on top. It's really taking the thing on top and what are its component states and how could it get triggered and how does that work and do it for each one. And so when we pass that along, we're passing along, here's the component's life cycle, here's how it works. It's more boxed in list of things to do for someone to QA, for someone to develop and review. User flows are still a thing. They're cool. I do them. Meta thinking. I love this slide. I use this image all the time. There is no spoon. What's the meta thinking behind this? My partner told me, my wife, she's like, don't say nothing is real. Don't go in there and be like, total meta thinking, right? But really, the UI that we're designing isn't really, how long is it going to live? What's the life cycle of new product that we release before we need to iterate? How much are we putting into everything that we have to bring it to an end state, make it perfect, user test the heck out of it before we push it out? And how much are we thinking, instead of designing those flows, designing a design system that's going to be scalable and building out from a component-based perspective? Because we're going to be thinking about architecting and building design systems, and then pressing a button, and then seeing all of the magic happen and looping everything together. That's the road that I'm on in technology right now. And that's it. Thanks for listening to state-based design on components. Questions?
So would you define components as only user-facing components, or would you might include maybe stuff like database components or other stuff in the back end that don't interact directly with the user?
So that's really interesting because I'm working on a technology right now that tries to abstract the development process into UI. And one of the biggest things we need to figure out is the stuff that you don't see, how do you design it and how do you show it, right? And when it gets to component-based design, designing functions and how functions work basically is really interesting, especially if you want somebody to be able to build a function and assign it to a component, if you get where I'm going with it. And so I think that the reason that I deviated away from user flows, right, and started to think about things like components, is to be able to break down the conversation across stakeholders, like mainly on the technical side of things, and on the business side of things. Like, can it do this? And then how does all of that work in the background? And so, I mean, when we design right now, as an example, me and Moses, my partner that I work with, we're side by side. He does a lot of the complicated building. I make things look awesome. But we're architecting how everything should work and co-designing it as we go along. What's the language to communicate that? How do you show that? Component-based design should encompass all of that. It's a tricky thing, and I'm figuring it out. I'm communicating this, and I'm actively trying a different design process. It's a rocky road. It's not that easy to communicate these things, especially if you're talking to non-technical folks. What are you talking about? What state? What are components? What do you mean? And that's a whole education hill to climb while using new processes. Thanks for your question. Any other questions? I can't see anything, by the way, so I'm just asking and looking into the blank. Hi.
Along similar tangents. So, like, what's the 100+ screen envision equivalent in the component state?
It's funny, I'm working on one right now, actively. What's the equivalent? One is that if you have, say, 5 components, right? You have like say a native unpopulated state of that component, a stateless component, really. And what that would look like is I'd say, okay, you know what? We're going to need to show all of the state life cycles for this component. And like we heard earlier, what's possible, under what could they do, what's the backend and database time and all of that. So let's say we have 5 major components on an enterprise app. You'd have 5 boards just for the components, and then you'd cover all of your use cases, all of them, right? With maybe, say a component is a left navigation and you show 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 different versions it could ever be. It's never going to look like anything else. Everything you need to know about building it goes here. Here are all the rules for it. Don't worry about the other stuff. Somebody just go and build this. So if you think 1 board for each of those, and let's say 5, that's 5, right? The second thing that I can't escape user flows, right? User flows are important. We need to see something sometimes. And I've gone to a beginning, middle, end mentality. So I'm happy to show the beginning of something, the middle of it, like say when I say something, a view, a set of components on the screen, a UI, I want to show the beginning, the middle, and the end, because it's easy as 1, 2, 3, easy peasy, ABC, right? And so let's say we have 5 user flows, 5 times 3 is 15, plus 5, that's 20, and then you have exceptions, right? And stuff we forgot, like we totally forgot to design that thing. Oh yeah, that's right, we need to go ahead and make it. Pushing 30. If we're going beyond that, I feel as though we're not doing something right. Like I actually get scared, like as a entrepreneur, founder, business person, let alone a designer, let alone knowing that we've got to build this or somebody's going to have to build it. And ask me again in a bit, because I'm going to see this carried out through a few different projects and life cycles. I'll write about it and I'll share. And it's interesting because I have a lot of data, right? Like down to the, say, 45, 50 projects showing, doing user flows and doing this and that. I know all the points, from the companies that ended up fundraising and being successful to the ones that didn't, the ones that shipped products and won awards, the ones that faked it, etc. And now I'm getting to do it again to be able to test efficiency, right? How could we condense like a 24-week design process into 4 weeks? What does that mean? I'll let you know. 30. Just don't want to force the QA. Think of QA. Just think of the QA people. Don't make them do all of that work. Yes, not.
I have a different kind of follow up on that. I think it's 5. For any component, I would say there's like you have a successful state,
Right?
you have an error state,
Mm-hmm.
you have an empty state,
Mm-hmm.
you have the little data state, and then you have the lots of different states. And if you look at kind of user profiles, like what do they say when they comes in and there's nothing on it? What do they say when it's completely filled out? What do they say when they filled it out incorrectly? And what do they see if they put a 5-page wall of text filled out? Lots of just information. And then you can build up from that across any component, across this 5.
What's really fun is when you're going through these states, and you remember when I said design for the success state of the component. That's the most basic. That's the one we want it to work. And then there's those additional states even from like a technical perspective. That's just it. What's really interesting is seeing that again, that component, and saying, okay, now that we're going to do these 5, let's bring in all of our stakeholders that will interact with this and make sure that their anything that they could do and trigger is reflected in those 5 states that we design. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us for Design TO.to. Enjoy your networking.